I'm Michael Binyon, working for The Times. I've written a piece about the possible railway links between China and Europe, the so-called New Silk Road.
Silk Road, caravans laden with spices, precious stones, silver and
This
silk.
route is one that's been there for hundreds of years. The idea now is to duplicate the route by new rail lines linking China with the Middle East and Europe. This will allow goods to be transported in about 15-20 days instead of at least a month, which is what it takes if you send goods by ship all the way round through the Suez Canal to Europe. There is an existing rail route through Russia. It's the Trans-Siberian Railway. Here's a little model that was given to me by the Russian Railways Minister. It's a rather sweet little crystal model. It doesn't look anything like that now, of course. And there is a branch from Ulan-Ude, which is about two-thirds of the way across to the Pacific, that goes down through Mongolia and straight into Beijing. The problem about that railway is that it is very heavily used. It's almost full, in fact. And also it's completely controlled by the Russians because it is a Russian route. The Chinese are looking for something which would be an alternative to the Trans-Siberian, and the main aim is to get a rail link that has to come out at Istanbul. Istanbul is the only way into Europe that doesn't pass through lines controlled by Russia. The Turks are digging a big tunnel under the Bosphorus, which should be open next year, and so that will mean if you can get a rail link into Turkey, you can then go into Istanbul under the Bosphorus, and you're already then in the main European rail network, and then you can take your goods to wherever you want. Of course, the problems are firstly technical. The main difficulty is that the gauges of the lines are different. Most of Western Europe uses a standard gauge. That's the gauge used in Britain, 4 foot 8.5 inches, and that gauge is the same in China, in Turkey, in Iran and Afghanistan. But the Russians use a different gauge, a broader one, over 5 feet. And that gauge is the one that was laid out across the whole of the former Soviet Union. So, of course, all the Central Asian countries, including also Georgia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, they use the broader gauge. So if you're running a line from China into Kazakhstan to get down to Turkey, then you have to actually have 2 trains lined up side by side where the 2 gauges meet, and you have to have cranes that can transship great cargo containers from one train to another one. Changing the wheels is possible, but it's quite a difficult and noisy and expensive procedure, a lot of clanging and banging, and if you're running freight, which is the point of these intercontinental Asia-Europe routes, it's much easier simply to transfer the cargo containers from one thing to the other. And of course, added to that, you have to have a customs agreement on where the inspections will take place, whether the goods will be looked at en route again and again and again, which takes time and money, whether you can have a single license for transferring things from Beijing, say, to Germany with only one inspection, and also a common agreement on signalling, on rail law, rail regulations. It has to be the same more or less all the way through so that people know what's going to happen further down the route. That's the technical problem. The political problem is probably more difficult, and that is that relations between some of these countries on the proposed route are not very good. There is already an existing link into Kazakhstan. A link is already across there. The Kazakhs are thinking of building another one, so you would have 2 links into their system, which again is now broad gauge. It's the Soviet gauge, and here you would come all the way around. You can see this black line sort of weaving around the borders of these other Central Asian states, through Uzbekistan, through Tashkent, down into Turkmenistan, and from here to about there, you've got a pretty close link with Iran. Now, there are 2 ways now of going. You can either continue all the way over to the port on the Caspian Sea, then a train would have to be put on a ferry and go across to Azerbaijan, just port somewhere near Baku, And then there is a line existing through these mountainous republics. We've got Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. The problem is Armenia, this tiny little republic tucked in here next to Turkey, has closed its border with Turkey. These two have been at loggerheads for a long, long time. So there's a proposal to build a diversionary line just across from Georgia into Turkey. So that's one way of going. But of course it means putting all the train on a ferry. Now that's quite cumbersome and expensive. The other way, of course, would be to come by land across into Iran. There are two countries that are fairly crucial to the missing link, and that is either Afghanistan or Iran. And once you're in Iran, you can then carry on into Turkey. The problem is both these two countries, they have poor relations with a lot of their neighbours, with each other, and also Iran in particular, very poor relations with the West. And these countries, the Central Asian countries, they are constantly squabbling with each other. So to get political agreement on running trains from China all the way up to Europe will take a lot of hard work and a lot of goodwill. But eventually you'll be able to go from the Great Wall of China, hopefully, to this map of the Euro countries. You will transport freight much more quickly than if you sent it from these Chinese ports right the way around through the Suez Canal up into the Mediterranean. You could probably get goods in less than 3 weeks. It'd probably be 20 days or thereabouts, whereas it would take over a month to go by sea. So depending what you're exporting, you would be able to move a huge volume of goods from this great centre of manufacturing over to Western Europe.